Okay, all right, looking good, looking good. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining. Melissa is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. She had a few audio challenges, so she's switching over to another laptop and she'll join us in a few minutes. But really keen to get started. This webinar will be recorded and sent out to you after this call. Let me just start off by saying, last night as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, my goodness, how do I set this call up? Big topic, really important topic, very prominent right now. As I was preparing, I started to receive a few messages from people who said that they were joining the webinar, and a few people saying, going remote, hiring people remotely, leading teams remotely, and onboarding. It's such a hot topic. But there was one message that came through that really hit me. I just want to quickly share it just for context and to set some tone for this call. It came from somebody, a founder, CEO, and they said, going remotely and adapting to this new challenge, it's going to make a huge impact on my livelihood, my business, and all of my people's livelihoods as well. And they finished off by saying, so I'm really looking forward to this call to find out how to do it. And that really resonated with me because I felt an overwhelming sense of togetherness. This is very new for a lot of us, and we're all in it together, no matter what industry, where you are in the world. This is going to be a new way of working for us for the foreseeable. So with that, it kind of reminded me that even in these challenging times, I actually feel a great sense of empowerment from that, and I really just want to share that to set the tone of this call. So speaking of which, let's go over and meet our panelists who are already doing this. So let's switch over, and Hope, let's start with you. I'd love for you to say hi and let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi everyone. We're so happy to have you here today. My name is Hope Weatherford, and I lead the talent attraction team at InVision. We are a 100% remote company and have been for quite some time. So I'm really looking forward to sharing a lot of some of the tips and tricks that we have come up with along the way. So thanks, you guys.
Great. Thank you so much. And Ryan, over to you.
My name is Ryan Malone. I'm the CEO and founder of SmartBug Media. We're an 85-person digital marketing agency, and we've never had an office since we were founded 10 years ago. So we've been doing remote.
Yeah, actually, on that, as I was preparing for this last night, I did see a kind of Ryan status update saying I've been working from home for 10 years, and I was like, okay, cool. So we have true experts in this call today. Melissa, thank you for joining us. I know you've had a few challenges with your audio, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for making it a little late. I did have some technical difficulties there, so thanks so much. Yes, so I represent Stack Overflow. I'm the VP of People there. Our organization inherently in its DNA is remote. We have about 40% of our staff that's remotely based. So we've actually honed down a lot of the remote sort of mystery on what it takes to go remote. So I'm happy to share some of the best practices that we've learned throughout the years.
That's great. Thank you, Melissa. And just while I'm here, my name is Will Alexander. I look after our customer success teams here at Hired. I'm based in grey and overcast New York, and I previously led our talent and customer success teams in London, hence the accent. And before that, I looked after people and talent at Apple for 4 years as well. And so, yeah, again, I'm delighted to be here. Big topic. We have some great speakers. I'm really keen to dive in. So let's move forward to the agenda then. Three sections. We're going to kick off by talking about working remotely. Lots and lots of kind of content already on this. So we'll spend a few minutes on working remotely. Then we'll talk a lot about how to actually recruit and hire people remotely as well. And then more of a new one for us, we're going to be talking about how you actually onboard people remotely as well. But we will make sure that we leave a good 20 minutes towards the end for Q&A. So please feel free to ask your questions as we go along. And the team will pull together some key questions for us to go over towards the end. So to get started, we're going to do a quick poll because we really want to hear from you and where you are to find out kind of like how you're coping with this transition. So if we move to the next slide and set up the poll, we're going to ask you like, what is the biggest challenge that you're currently facing when you're transitioning to remote work? And so is it adopting a virtual hiring process? Are you onboarding remote employees? Working cross-functionally, the communication and collaboration across teams, or for any others, feel free to put them in the chat box. But it'd be really good to hear or get a sense of what your biggest challenges are right now, and then we'll display the results live on the screen, and we'll make sure that we cover that. So I'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and do that. All right, okay, bit of a mix. So 43% want to talk more about onboarding remote employees, 22% adopting a virtual hiring process, and 28% on cross-functional communication across the business. It's actually interesting to see a mix of results there. But just Ryan, coming to you first of all, what do you kind of make of the results, or getting a pulse check on the audience here and kind of what they're looking to do or their current challenges?
It actually doesn't really surprise me, because I think the biggest fear for, I think people have an unnecessary fear that people aren't going to be productive when they're home. And I think that you go through all of this interviewing and due diligence to hire somebody that you really trust, and just because they're at home, people kind of freak out a little bit that it's not going to get done. And the truth is that it's exactly the same. I think from the employee experience perspective, the onboarding part is really important. So I'm not surprised that that's the top on the list.
Okay, great. And Hope, what's your take on the results?
Not surprising for me either. I think thinking about onboarding is, such a personal piece and such a big part in, really creating that new hire experience from the beginning of the recruitment process all the way through the onboarding and through an employee's time with the company. And the onboarding piece is such a critical part of ensuring that those new hires feel really good about where they're going to be. And a lot of times the programs that are built today are built in such a way that it is in person, in a room with 4 walls, and all of the things that go along with it. How do you get your laptop to a person? How do you give them their swag? How do you make all of those things happen? And I think as you're trying to think about that on top of all of the other things, not surprising at all.
Thank you. Melissa, what about you? What's your take on this?
I echo both Ryan and Hope's comments. One thing to add would be the connectivity, right? I think there's this fear that because someone is working remotely, you won't get that sort of personal connection throughout the process that we all know that an onboarding creates a successful onboarding experience. When you get connected to the company emotionally, employees tend to want to feel good about the choice they've made. So there's that fear of that connectivity piece that's missing. So I'm not surprised with the results for that reason.
Great, Melissa, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, we've got you all back. Yeah, let's move on to resources then. It's open to any three of you. What are the kind of most useful resources that you and your teams have adopted in the past? Maybe Ryan, or kind of what you find that your teams are using now as you kind of move into this new way of working.
I think everybody's got a somewhat similar stack, and I don't mean this to be a technical discussion. So let's assume you've got a conference system and a messaging system, and I think most companies are kind of there. I think for us at the end of the day, nobody on this phone call is going to remember this conference when we're older. All you're going to remember is the memories that you create with the people you care about. And so for us, the resources are really what you can give people to achieve that goal. So we tell people that when they start at our company, that the first thing you should put on your calendar is not work stuff. It's the stuff that makes you feel human. It's the time with your family. It's the time with the gym. Because when you're a remote worker, the kind of pressure to be seen at your desk that you see in the office is gone, and it's more about like the things that you get done. And so you can have a more flexible environment. And so I think that goes a long way. And the other thing, since we've done it so long, it's kind of, we don't have like a package of things that we give people, but what we do tell people is that when we onboard our customers, we tell them that our culture is all about memories, and they should expect to see a kid walking in the background, and they should expect to hear somebody laughing and maybe an animal walking around. And that's just part of our soul. And so when all of this stuff came down, what the resource that we gave to our team, our customers, was expect more. And the resources that we gave to our employees was there is no shame in having a family member walk behind you because you're at home. Like, you should embrace it. Grab your kid, introduce them to who you're talking to, because everybody has a family, everybody has somebody that's important, and it's part of your work. And I think that take some pressure off of people, as opposed to this like beautifully pristine environment that is supposed to mimic an office.
That's great, thank you. Melissa, Hope, anything else you want to add regarding kind of resources?
Yeah, and I would say from a resource perspective, I mean, we could talk about different tools all day. I think any type of collaboration tools, and start thinking a little bit outside of what that traditional kind of tech stack that Ryan talked about is, there's a lot of different tools that you can use. I'll at some point probably talk a little bit more about one of our tools that we have here, which is called Freehand. And it really definitely can be used in a multitude of ways across your business. Think of it more of as a big collaborative whiteboard. And so we'll talk about that as we talk through the interviewing process and how we're doing things. We'll talk about how we use that. But one of the things that Ryan talked about was really just feeling good about where you are in your environment. And a lot of you are, building this remote space where you're working for the first time. And I'll just share a couple things about my work environment that I really like. Like Ryan, I've been working remotely for quite some time. And I've kind of honed what's special for me. And for me, it's the things that you can't really always have in an office, like a very nice smell. So getting a nice diffuser, if that's your thing, or having a candle that you can't have in an office. All of those things. And there's a lot of really great, great products out there, a lot of great lighting out there. If you're going to be spending a lot of time on video in front of clients, things like that. And, make the best of it, right? Because while like smells obviously are my thing, you're not smelling someone's lunch that they heated up a little bit too long in the break room, or burnt popcorn. So for me, those are the things that kind of help me get really excited about being in a remote office.
Thank you. Melissa, anything to add?
Sure, I would add the connectivity piece again. So I know I keep going back to that, but I think in terms of resources, when someone comes on board, being able to really connect them to people in the organization that can help them understand the culture, even create like a buddy system per se, but virtually, you can have virtual buddies, right? So that you still feel like you're part of the office, but not kind of in the office. We use Slack quite a bit, and we talked about tools. Everybody, I think, around the room uses Slack. So that's something that we use as a connectivity tool, but really developing that connection, I think on the resources side and being able to offer people those one-on-one connections from the outset, I think is one of the best resources you can offer folks during the onboarding process. And we'll talk a little bit more because I actually have a 3-pillar process by which we put people through in terms of a 90-day ramp-up onboarding process.
That's great, thank you. And yeah, I'll add here that I know when I've been chatting with the team at Workable, they've been working hard on creating guides and templates and tutorials to help their customers navigate these uncertain times. So they'll be sharing a link after the webinar. Same with Hired, we've created a bunch of resources supported with data to help people through this. So they're on our site, we'll also send those around as well. All right, let's move on to remote working. Lots of content already on this, so we'll start here, but really move on to hiring and onboarding for a bit more of the meat of the conversation. So let's start with you, Ryan, if you don't mind. Since there's lots of resources out there, can you share kind of maybe what we don't know or what isn't out there around how you drive productivity to socialization? It'd be great to hear kind of like what advice you have for leaders moving into this and starting to lead teams remotely.
Sure. What we found is that I think if you have done remote for a while, you find that you can figure out the productivity stuff and measurement and all yada yada. The thing that you can't figure out is the nonverbal communication that you see when you walk by somebody's office, and when somebody gets on a camera during the workday, you know, they have their game face on, but you don't know what's really going on. In fact, we had an employee who had a death in the family like an hour before a call, and when she got on the phone call, she was completely buttoned up. But you had no idea. If you were in the office, you would have seen that and said, "You need to go home. Like, you do not need to go on this call." And so, you know, I think, you know, there's a ton, you know, we use a lot of project management software, and because we're an agency, we track time. And so the whole productivity thing hasn't been an issue for us because people do what they're supposed to do, and either their teammate knows if it doesn't happen or a client does. But I think to be cognizant of the fact that as a manager, you need to actually reach out and dedicate time to maintain a relationship, which is sort of awkward. Like, you know, "Hey, Will, I haven't talked to you in 2 weeks. How are you?" And it's like, it sounds like super creepy, but you have to kind of force that conversation because it's the only way you can get back and forth. And we will call, I know I personally call everybody at our company over a period of time to just say, what can we do to make SmartBug healthier? What does your roadmap look like here? And is there a path to see it? Because you don't have that that office kind of chatter that you typically see. And then I guess the second thing is you miss out on that 5 minutes before a conference call where everybody's sitting at a conference table chatting about whatever. I always encourage people to take some piece of a call that they have with a client or with themselves and just shoot the breeze, because that's how relationships are made. And if it's all business, you miss that opportunity.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Hope, are you happy to share any advice you have?
Yeah, and I would say, you know, Ryan, you did such a great job tying into some of the things that I was going to mention. I think for us, over communication, we have, you know, 700 plus people in our company, and over communication in a fully remote environment, specifically when there may be a lot of you that are getting used to this, is going to be key. Use different avenues of communication. Use your messaging, Slack, you know, GChat, whatever it is that you're using. Use that along with maybe a video, right? And it doesn't, you know, don't overcomplicate it. Just, you know, just do a quick video and, you know, look at email. And if you don't feel like something's working, don't be afraid to change that in the middle. And, you know, really think about how, you know, how things are communicating. I think Ryan brought up a really good point of being able to build those connections and really being able to think about, you know, from a leader, how your employees or how your partners across the business or partners externally are, how they're doing, right? And, you know, you may not be able to walk by someone's office and, you know, and get an idea of how things are going, if they're having a good day or a bad day, but don't underestimate the value of video. as much as people don't want to turn their video on, video is the key, I think, to successful communication in a remote environment. And then also, really paying attention to nonverbal cues. I think as a leader in a remote environment, really being able to hone in on those types of things are very important. And then I think just some of the other things is making sure, that you do have that time for, for chit chat and small talk, and it's not, don't use your video conferencing just as an avenue for a meeting. If you need to have a quick conversation with one of your coworkers, instead of saying, hey, I'll give you a call, right? Like, never use your cell phone. If you don't have to, just jump on a Zoom or jump on a WebEx, whatever tool it is that you're using, and really start using those quick conversations that you would think about as you're walking by, do them over video. That helps a lot. And then I set up an hour every week on our team. We call it Friday Fun Day. And we just come in and we just chat about anything and everything, sometimes related to work, sometimes not. And sometimes there's an agenda. Most of the time there's not. Jump in if you want. You don't have to join if you don't have time. And that's been helpful as well, kind of getting to the team to connect. And you as a leader having the ability to connect with them as well and learn a little bit more about them that you would normally see in a traditional office setting.
Absolutely. And Melissa?
So one of the things that we've done very successfully recently with remote staff, that with the entire company really, is we rolled out a platform where we can offer each other recognition via Slack, which was really has been really useful in terms of keeping that connectivity with people who are remote and then people who are in the office. And then through that same system, we're able to have these one-on-one nudges. I think what Ryan talked about before, that manager not talking to someone for like 2 to 3 weeks and reaching out, what we actually have is a mechanism where we can nudge those managers. Hey, we noticed you haven't spoken to this person in 3 weeks. You may want to reach out to them, just reminding them that they have remote staff. I think those types of things are really helpful because it's like, oh, wow, this person's thinking of me. So I'm not like sitting out here isolated in an island all by myself, and I'm being recognized by my peers. Everyone is in this with me together. And so those are the things that we're doing that are working really well for us to keeping everyone connected.
Hey, Will, can I just add something? Hope brought up a really good point about the importance of video, and it's not just like the manager seeing the nonverbal communication from the employee, but oftentimes it's really easy as a leader at a company to just type up some announcement. I would encourage people to record themselves, whether it's like a video or whatever, a Zoom video. When they're going to do an announcement, on camera, and don't script it. Like, just let it rip, because like when your team sees like your own emotion and your own kind of just the nonverbal cues on your face, I think it's really, really impactful to them, and it comes across really cold if in a remote environment, as a leader, you just send out email announcements all day. It's a tiny little change. It's actually easier than writing a big old email, and it's really impactful.
Yeah, I have one more thing on that. Ryan just reminded me, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ryan, because you triggered a thought I just want to share. We actually do fireside chats where our CEO comes up on a weekly basis, and we talk about the business, and we all record each other. And we actually have different people who come in and talk about different pieces of the business. So thank you, Ryan, for triggering that thought. It reminded me that Stack Overflow, we do fireside chats where we actually include that, and it's very well received. So I appreciate that.
That's a great call as well, because we're all forced to like now operate under this like new environment and operate in this new world. But with that will come innovation and like finding new ways of doing things. So there will be some positives and some efficiency gains that come from that. And something really simple. Usually on a Friday, I send a recap to my teams, and it takes me typically 20 minutes to write. This Friday, I sent a video recording to the team, and it took me 2 minutes. So I was thinking, wow, all right, already hopefully that helps with the connection piece. but also I have to save myself, 15 minutes of writing an email. I'm keen to move on. Before we do, Ryan, I can see a guitar in the background. Do you ever call up your team and give them a little tune on the guitar?
Come on, we did this on the pre-call. My guitar is in my office because I am so bad that my family will not let it in any other room in my house. So it would probably be more of a punishment. Okay.
Maybe something to think about. I might pick that up. My team probably wouldn't appreciate that, actually. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to remote recruiting. This one is pretty close to my heart. We talk about it all day, every day at Hired. And certainly our customer success teams are always talking to our customers about your hiring funnel being just as important as your revenue funnel. And I think lots of businesses realize that and are really realizing that now. In the past, if there was a challenge with your revenue funnel, you probably have an idea of how you go about it and fixing it. And so when something external comes along that we're experiencing now that's challenging your hiring funnel, I think that's quite new to us. And I think that's going to be something that our platforms are going to do to support people through this time. But let's talk about that. So during this time, there is companies that are going on hiring freezes and pausing their hiring, but many companies are still hiring and still have recs that they need to fill. So Melissa, if I could come to you first, what advice do you have around encouraging talent to consider leaving their current company where there may be uncertainty or they may kind of feel safe where they're currently
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. It's less about convincing people to come on board during this specific time and more about really following your process in terms of the work that you already set up and doing the due diligence in terms of making sure that you've dotted your I's and you crossed your T's. And at the end of the day, let's all really face it, when you're hiring people, there's always a calculated risk that you're taking. Whether that person is remote or not, the reality is that we never really know 100% how that person's going to behave till we start working with them. So it's really no different than hiring someone in person. So, and that's the advice that's the one piece of advice that I give people is like, you're never going to be 100% sure, but you've done your due diligence, you've worked with the team, you all feel really good about this person. So let's just jump off the cliff, because at the end of the day, it's the same as hiring someone in person. So that's one piece of advice that I give.
That's great, Melissa. Thank you. And Hope and Ryan, can you talk us through what remote interviewing looks like at your organization from when the candidate applies to that offer?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next on this one. So, for us, we have, at any given time, 50 plus positions open across our organization. And so our process from that very beginning at that funnel looks very similar. We have a very, very short application process that we use. And then as we go through the interview or through the candidate experience, we start adding additional data to that information. We, really kick off with what I feel are very, very kind and extensive communications to let the candidates know, hey, here's what the next steps are. Here's some things that, what to expect in this type of an environment. Because for a lot of people, there aren't a lot of 100% remote companies out there, so they don't know what to expect either. So we really try to set them up for success as they're going through. Our first main touch point as a human, we do everything over video. Our recruiters conduct a comprehensive screen, which focuses really on our culture fit, the ability to adapt or work in a remote environment, and then overall fit for the role. Our hiring managers come in at that point, and where they focus really on team and job fit. And really, and then another piece to that, if it's a manager or higher position, we spend about 30 minutes really talking about and learning more about the candidates in terms of how they lead or potentially see themselves as leaders in a remote environment. For us, that's a big kind of a big area that we spend a lot of time focusing on, as some of the things that we've all experienced working in a remote environment is making sure that you have all of the right people in the right places. From there, we go into an interview loop. Just depending on the position, it may look a little bit different for different groups or different levels. But we have them meeting not only with team members and that they would be working directly with, but also cross-functional team members as well. We go up levels, we go down levels, and we'll talk, I think, a little bit later more around the technical piece of interviewing, but we really make sure that they've got a wide view of what it's like to communicate in 100% kind of a remote environment, the advantages that come along with that, and then also that gives us an opportunity to really get to know them, right? And then I think some of the most important pieces to our interview process is that we have a bar raiser at the end of each. That's like the last interview that you go into, and those people are trained in a very specific way on what it is that they're looking for, and then we really trust their recommendation. The hiring manager is the ultimate decision maker in these, in most of these instances, and we tie that all back by having a really strong debrief. Our debrief with with the entire interview team, and we go back and forth. These debriefs can last anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and ideally at the end of those debriefs we walk away with a decision, but it ends up a really nice conversation. And as Melissa mentioned, it feels very similar to like what would happen if somebody were coming in an all-day interview or something like that.
That's great. Thank you. And Ryan, what about yourself?
Sure. So we're smaller. We've got 85 people. I think what a lot of times employers forget is there's this unwritten rule when you go to join a company. And most people talk about the fiduciary responsibility of the employee being a good representative of the company's brand. But not many people talk about the fact that the employer has to be a good fiduciary of the candidate's time, because the truth is you can't go back and relive your life, and people are choosing to work at your company at the expense of some other opportunity. And so we've spent a lot of time focusing on like culture marketing for our company to try to illustrate what it's like here and the type of family that you join, such that we're attracting people that want to be part of that. Our interview process is, our recruiter team will do some screening for the pain point that the candidate is trying to solve and what their ideal situation is. Because if we can't solve the pain point and we can't provide something close to their ideal, they're not going to be here for a while. So that's kind of a weed out step for us. In certain roles, we ask them to submit a video to answer a couple of questions. And since we're an agency, we're in front of customers a lot. And so you kind of have to have a command of a meeting and a certain, confidence and charisma. And in those videos, they're not long, they're like, 3-4 minutes, but you're also looking for how they present themselves, what their space looks like, because that's the representation of your brand to your client. For other roles like development and stuff like that, it's not as big of a deal, but once that happens, then we go into a skills fit, and then there's a couple different levels depending on their role. We're still of the size where I'm the last interviewer, and it's not a control thing. It's fundamentally, it goes back to that unwritten rule, which is you're choosing us versus the opportunity versus something else, and you should be able to ask anything you want of the person who's driving the strategy of the company. And it's also a chance for me to convey what we're trying to build, which is this place where you go to work with people that you have this deep intellectual respect for. You're not going to be best friends with everybody, but you should know that you're going to work with smart people who have your back and that you have time to create memories in your life. And I think hearing that from somebody high up at the company means a lot to a candidate. And so that's how our process goes outside of the standard referencey type things. We use a scoring system in our ATS to do that.
Yep. Hey, Ryan, do you use a specific software or tool for your video piece?
When they submit it, we just tell them to download the Vidyard plugin.
Okay.
It's sort of, for us, right, there's a couple like checks along the way, right? Like if, since we're a digital agency, right, if somebody's really having a hard time creating the video, that might be a little bit of a red flag for a certain role. But we try to make it as easy as possible and not, we don't want people to spend 2 days like producing some video. We just want to hear you talk. Like, are you articulate? Can you convey an idea? Is your space well kept? And I'll be honest, I cleaned mine up before we got on this webinar. But like, I think that you see so much, it's that first impression, and you want to be able to see, like, is there like some energy from the person that you're watching on the screen? And so, and then the people that don't want to do that tells me that maybe they don't want to be here that much. So.
Actually, Ryan, while we're on that, there is a question here for you around like, how do you make sure you build rapport via video? I know it's quite a nuance, but do you have any tips or tricks on how best to build rapport with a candidate remotely?
I usually have them, my interviews are weird, right? By the time they get to me, like our team thinks that they fit, the skills are fit. I want to learn a couple things. I want to learn what they're like as a person, because we've like, I think, got a really cool culture, and somebody should be additive to that culture. I'm trying to figure out if they're resilient, because I think to be remote, you have to be resilient, right? Things change, technology snafus happen. Like if you're somebody that expects your world to be perfectly scheduled out every day, remote's not you. If you're somebody that your whole like social energy comes from the fact that you go to lunch with the same people and then you go to happy hour with the same people, remote's taking something from you rather than giving it to you. So I try to just find out like why they made the career decisions in their life, and because it tells a story of what they're interested in. I ask them what they want to be when they grow up, and everybody kind of laughs. I learn a little bit about where their social energy's from, and try to just be vulnerable when they ask questions. And if they didn't ask a question that they probably should have, I answer it for them, because I mean, we're all people, and at the end of the day, business is done between people. It's not done between companies and candidates or applications and approvals. And everybody here tries to create a connection, no different than if you met somebody at a cocktail party and you want to learn more about them, because that's part of it.
Absolutely. All right, I'm checking time and keen to move on to remote onboarding. As I know, there's 40-something% of the results were here. So let's talk about onboarding remotely. So, onboarding somebody into your organization is important during the best of times. Now that we're faced with onboarding new hires virtually, a lot of companies are going to have to build new programs and adjust the way they're doing it. So let's have each of you talk through what onboarding looks like at your organization, from supplying them with equipment to their day-to-day. And Melissa, I'd love for you to start us off here.
Sure. So I typically we create at Stack Overflow a 90-day ramp-up plan where we like to use, and I will be honest with you, it's not always perfect. We try our best to make it the best that we can. But in terms of every single department has pieces that are customized for their own department, for the development team, the sales team, etc. But from a foundational piece, there are 3 pillars that we typically take. The first 30 days, we focus on connection, which I talked about earlier. It's about culture, the norms, key stakeholders, teammates, making introductions to all of those people, and then making connections and helping them understand the Stack way of life is really important. So that's the first 30 days. It's really about making those connections. The second piece is learning. Between day 30, day 1 you're learning, but really we focus on connection for the first 30 days. And then 31 to 60, it's learning about the strategic priorities, key projects in the teams and initiatives, and really helping people get a couple of projects under their belt, right? Because they're learning, but at the same time, they want to be contributing. So you want to give them some quick wins to help them along the way. And then the third piece, from between 60 and 90 days, it's really setting goals on what success is going to look like in the future. And within setting those goals, it's really working together with your manager and the leadership team to help you set those goals for the future. So those are the 3 pillars that we use across the organization. Like I said, there are areas where we customize, or the teams, for instance, in technology do a little bit different because they have to take a deeper technical dive. And in sales, there may be some sales pieces that, in terms of sales enablement, that plays different roles. But from a foundational piece, those are the 3 pillars that we use.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Ryan, what about yourself?
So it's interesting, like, you know, like before we started this company, you never saw culture and friendships and relationships be the first part of onboarding, right? It was always like the 2-hour mandatory video you had to watch that made you want to jump out of a window. But for us, the first thing that people do, we feel like tribes are really important. So the first thing that you do when you come here is you set up a get to know you call, which is a 20-minute call with everybody at the company. And the only rule is you can't talk about work. And it's a way for people to figure out like who their crew is and what they have in common with people so that they can quickly get integrated into teams that are like social teams. You know, after the HR onboarding part of it, we have some role specific onboarding. We have this concept called 80% effective in 60 days, which is, we take it kind of out of the old apprentice model. I think one of the things that some companies struggle with is your training is basically to watch videos for 30 days and then you're asked to do something, and it just doesn't, it's just a waste of time. So we know that in certain roles, there's activities that you do more frequently than others. And if you go back to the apprentice days when you were building a brick wall, the master mason would say, all right, I'm going to show you how to make cement, and you're going to make cement all day long until you're really good at it. And then I'm going to turn you loose on a customer. And so what we try to do is train people on a particular area of their job that they do frequently, and let them do it really, really well so they can become confident in their role, and that we can leverage them with clients. And then we roll on to the next most frequently used kind of responsibility. And so what that allows us to do is the time to market for our talent is faster, but like the time to confidence for the candidate is better because they have a series of wins that are virtually guaranteed in the way that we do it. And so when they exit that period of time, they're pretty proud of themselves, and they're also a big value to the company.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And Hope.
Yeah, so we have an onboarding program called Xenia. And similar to Ryan, we really wanted to build this and focus more on building relationships and connection inside our organization. And that's kind of the core premise of this 20-hour session that we have. And it's over the course of a week. And we have them, depending on hiring scales, we have them once or twice a month. You know, we really use that time to encourage people to get to know each other, build their networks, you know, learn more about their teams, but really learn more about InVision. So we kind of have our remote onboarding broken up into 3 sections. We've got our pre-onboarding, which is all of our prep work as people are joining. We have our company onboarding, which I'll spend a little bit more time, that's Xenia. And then you have your department and team onboarding as well. Our onboarding experience, like I said, consists of 20 hours. The ultimate goal there is to really teach our InVision operating system, and that is how we work, what our culture's like, what you can expect, you know, really being able to bring your whole self to work, which a lot of times you're not able to do that in an office setting. You know, we talked about, you know, kids walking around, or maybe a new puppy that you just got that is barking in the background and wants to jump up and see you all day. Those are things that we expect. Those are things that we appreciate. And that's one of the things that really allows us to really get the most out of our teams and really get to know you know, all about the teams. So we've also found that a lot of our InVisioners just want to really understand and truly onboard themselves in this type of an environment. but literally as fast as they can, understanding our norms, understanding like, gosh, when do I stop working? When do I not? Is it, gosh, I got the Slack message and it's 10 o'clock, but I'm around. Do I answer it? Is that appropriate? All of those things really, really kind of helping build what that looks like. And I think lastly, with all of that, it's really when you think about being remote and you think about, we always tie everything, all companies have to tie things back to what we're doing around being productive and then what that ROI is. We really feel as we go through that senior class and we're really helping everybody ask the questions that they may not want to ask their manager, learn the tools that we use in a little bit of a different way in a really safe place. It helps us really kind of break through that virtual screen of Zoom, we use Zoom, and really get to that level of productivity. So also without, taking a lot of time from the different, managers that they would be going back to. So.
This is really helpful. This is great. We have over 100 questions in the chat, so I'm keen to kind of like get through at least three, four. They're touching on a lot of what you guys are already saying. So let's move forward. And you can add any additional color there as well. Before we jump into Q&A, we're just going to take one final poll to see or hear rather what you're interested in and like where we might be able to help. So Workable and Bamboo have given me a quick blurb here that would be really helpful for me to share. But if you're interested in finding out more, Workable, even now where business feels anything but usual, you can still keep your interviewing and hiring on track. So with their video interviews and their new candidate screening tool, they've released that now as free on their platform. So they can support you hire virtually, which will save you time and money spent on screening candidates. So feel free to talk to them and learn more about this free offer. With Hired, we're an AI-powered hiring platform that helps you find the best talent for your business in a more efficient way by helping you focus on candidates for the right fit. Actually, right now, candidates still have really high intent. They're highly qualified. They're responsive, and what's interesting on our platform is over 70% of candidates on our platform are actually looking for remote work opportunities. So over 1,500 candidates go live each week. That's a decent pool of candidates open to remote work. And then finally, Hired Assessments. It helps you automate your skills evaluation virtually with customizable preloaded assessments. And we also have a live online paired programming capability too. And then finally, Bamboo HR is an all-in-one HR software designed to streamline how small to medium-sized organizations collect, maintain, and use people data and analytics. People are at the heart of everything they do, and this extends to every step of the employee lifecycle. So in addition to tracking your people data and helping you make sense of that data, Bamboo HR includes solutions for hiring, onboarding, compensation, and culture. So if anyone is interested in scheduling a demo to find out more about Workable, Hired, or Bamboo HR, please let us know by completing the poll. Okay, so with that, we're going to display the SHRM code for those that need to take a note of it. Should be on your screen now. And we'll jump straight to the Q&A. So thank you for your questions. Let me pick the top one. So there's one here for you, Hope, and the question is, are candidates asking you questions about COVID-19 right now? And how is your team responding to that?
Oh, fantastic question. So we have part of the conversations that we're starting off with right now is acknowledging, right? And building, acknowledging what's happening in the world and the uncertainty that's there. And being incredibly empathetic, and then also optimist as well. I think that is how we start. We, we definitely never share what we think is going to happen, because that's probably not a really good thing to do. So we really kind of frame all of our answers in conversations around being empathetic and being optimist. What we do share is we share all of the things that we would share in a typical sell, right? If it's a passive candidate or if it's a candidate that has reached out to us to learn more about us. And for us, that's a very, that's a very important thing, because while we may not know what tomorrow brings, we know the values and the principles in which our company lives by. And we know, from an industry standard, kind of where we stand and where we anticipate and where we expect to continue to go. And if anybody needs to have like something a little bit more specific around that, I can dig deeper if that wasn't enough.
Thank you. I guess like a small follow-up question for me there is, are you seeing any differences in candidate intent? Are you getting a sense that candidates are still actively looking for a new role, even though times are pretty uncertain right now?
Yeah, that also another wonderful question, and thank you for that. And we're seeing kind of two types of people. We have candidates that may have never been interested in remote work, really kind of taking that plunge. We also are seeing candidates that are in stable environments right now. So a lot of passive candidates that we're reaching out to that are in stable environments may have wanted to have a conversation with us, 2 months ago, or gosh, call it 3 weeks ago at this point. And now, have said, gosh, I'm really interested in learning more. They'll have that conversation, but to move to any next level of conversations, they feel very much at pause. But we are also seeing a lot of candidates, like my recruiters right now are the busiest that they've ever been. We are going and we are talking to all of these people that we would have never necessarily talked to, and our application, our funnel has gone through the roof, as you guys can imagine, over the course of the last 2 weeks. And it is our job and it's our responsibility to talk to as many people as we can. And even if we don't have a position for them today, they're going to remember those conversations. So as we start having, as we start seeing a little bit more of a trend on, the people that want to talk versus the people that are a little bit hesitant, I think over time that may shift a little bit, but that's kind of where we are with that.
Yeah, I just want to add something. What's interesting is when we've gotten a lot of people who have come to us because their current employer has mishandled the shift to remote. And the biggest thing is like, I'm remote and all of a sudden my boss doesn't trust me to do anything. And I saw their true colors type situation. So I think if you're listening to this webinar, like it's no different. They're just traveling that day, but they're traveling for a long period of time. Like do not miss this opportunity to retain people, because a lot of people are unsettled a little bit, and if you kind of fuel that, then you may lose some people that you otherwise wouldn't.
And the other thing I would add, the other thing I would add to that too is don't take the environment of being pushed without your choice of going into a remote environment. Don't take that into a negative connotation as you think about remote working moving forward. There's a lot of, things that if you're in an environment that has done remote work for quite some time, that we may have figured out a little bit more, and we're trying to share as fast as we can with everybody. That would be the one thing that I would say as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really resonates. And I have the privilege on sitting on both sides of our marketplace, both the candidate side and the employer side. And for sure, we're all familiar with the nervousness and uncertainty client side, and companies are figuring out how to do this thing. What's quite reassuring for my talent teams on the other side is, and we sent a survey earlier this week, 73% of candidates are saying, despite what's going on, I'm still open, I'm still looking for a new opportunity, and I'm happy to interview remotely, I'm happy to be assessed remotely and onboarded remotely. And so despite the challenges we're seeing client side, that actually fills me with a lot of reassurance, especially given so many people are open to working remotely now. There's a good question here, Ryan. I was meant to ask you earlier, and you touched on it just then, but the question is, what do you think are the key skills for a leader who needs to lead teams remotely? What do you look for in your leaders?
Transparency, confidence without arrogance, vulnerability, accountability. I think, you have to tell people what's on your mind, and you have to kind of overshare, I think, in the remote world, because you don't have that 2-minute conversation next to the coffee pot in the lunchroom where you can like frame things and clarify things and stuff like that. So I think people need to be confident and comfortable in their leadership skills and know that they're going to make a good decision a good chunk of the time, and that sometimes they won't, and that's okay. And I think the resiliency part is because in this environment, especially in an agency environment, like stuff changes all the time, and you don't necessarily own your day per se, but being comfortable with that and knowing that you can make an impact every day, but have some unpredictability, I think those are good skills.
That's great, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, conscious we have 3 minutes. We're going to take a note of all of the questions that were asked, complete the answers to them, and then send them along with the video of this recording. So if you've asked a question, we will get back to you. So look out for that along with the recording of this. So let's try and get one last question in to you, Melissa. Quite an interesting one. So we're finding that Slack is getting to be a bit noisy at the moment, leading to some employees muting their channels or conversations, which defeats the entire process. Do you have any suggestions on recommendations to combat this, or any alternatives?
So that is a really interesting question, because I personally struggle with that myself. It is very distracting, and because you want to be in the know, especially when you're working remotely, you want to know what's going on in this office, that office. I would say that my best piece of advice is to be very thoughtful and mindful of the channels that you join, the information that you need to do your job, and then the social pieces. Just pick 3 channels. If you're a wine lover like me, pick a channel where you can sort of de-stress and get your sort of wine fix for the day. Or if you're a coffee lover, something that's social, and then the other channels should just only be really focused on your team and specific things that are happening in the office. I think when you join too many channels, it gets super noisy and very distracting. So I think being very mindful of what you join from the outset will help you a ton, and not thinking or feeling or getting FOMO, right? Some people get FOMO, fear of missing out, right? So don't fall into that trap, because the truth is, at the end of the day, all you need to really feel productive is feel close to your team, feel like you're contributing, and then getting that social fix for the day, if you will, remotely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It speaks to what Ryan was saying earlier around just jumping on a quick call, because something, let's say you could answer on a quick 2-minute call, you'd probably spend about 15 minutes typing about, and there's always lost in translation. And there's probably a bunch of other people who'd also benefit from hearing that information too. So there's definitely efficiency gains there. All right, so we're coming up to the hour, and we'll pause here. But thank you all so much. Hope, Ryan and Melissa, there's some great insight there. I'm looking forward to us getting the answers to the Q&A out along with the recording of this. But everybody who's dialed in, really appreciate your time. Hopefully this has been useful. We'll figure this out together, and we'll continue to lean on these 3 for advice on how to get there. So thank you so much. Have a great morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.